I'm Liberalita,
And I'm Sam.
and today we're talking about the first and second interlude chapters of Wind and Truth. This video contains spoilers for every Cosmere book and the preview chapters that have already been released. So if you don't want to be spoiled, then click off now. Just doing a little bit of housekeeping. As we're recording this, people have bought their World Hopper Ball tickets. Sam, my friend, and I will be going to Nexus. However, we didn't feel like doing the ball this year. But we have been looking over the Nexus schedule to plan what we're doing. Anything else going on, Sam?
I have been out stalking Dragonsteel headquarters.
Samantha!
I was in the neighborhood. Unfortunately, I did not find any exclusive Wind and Truth info this time, though.
So you went out stalking and you didn't even bother to find anything useful?
Sadly, no. I don't think anyone was home.
Well, we'll have to work on your break-in and entering skills later. For now, we have the first batch of interludes to go over. After Shalon and her crew leave Lasting Integrity, we catch up with Kalak, where he locks himself into his secure room, triple checks the locks, and goes back and forth on whether he should have joined Shalon and the rest of the team. He also thinks about his madness. These days, he only felt panic, indecision, and a crushing darkness. Seemingly, that darkness was always nearby, always threatening him, but without Ishar holding some of it back, it would have destroyed him long ago. Meaning that Ishar is doing something that is keeping the rest of, or at least Kalak, somewhat sane? Is he doing that with the rest of the heralds? Is that why he's so out there? What would happen if, and that's a big if, Kaladin manages to help him? Will the other heralds lose it?
You know, there's that one death rattle, the burdens of 9 become mine. Why must I carry the madness of them all? Oh, Almighty, release me. And we've all assumed that this is from Tom's point of view, but wouldn't he have taken on the burdens of 10? I think this could be referring to Ishar, which has all kinds of implications.
Ooh, that's a good interlude.
He is a fair bit nuttier than the others from what we've seen. Not that any of them are well.
And like I said before, I wonder what will happen if Kaladin actually manages to help him, which it seems like it's setting up it's not going to happen, but still.
Yeah. I think it'll either by extension heal the others too, or it'll break them all permanently.
My gut feeling is that it's going to break them.
And I'll bet on healing them. One of us should be right.
Truly the best way to go about predictions. And then the book goes, but he survived. He'd survived. Funny that he's so obsessed with living, or obsessed with surviving, given who's after him. Maybe Kelsier should consider working with him, since they have some aligned goals.
Yeah, but Kelsier's whole deal is instilling hope and tenacity in rundown people. Kalak has been running and hiding quite like a coward for a long time now. Something tells me Kel might not like him that much.
Yeah, that's fair. Speaking of which, he worries what if the Ghostbloods have sent others. He knew that Thedakar wanted him. Thedakar was a herald from another world, a creature who was resourceful and brutal. First of all, Kelsier, shut up! Second of all, the worst part of this line is that if you wanted to describe Kelsier to Rasharan, a herald probably would be the best way to...
Oh, I want so badly to know what Kelsier thinks of his reputation on Roshar.
Something tells me he'd love it.
He did always have a flair for the dramatic.
Possibly he's annoyed depending on how much he knows about what the Rasharan Ghostbloods are up to. Also, there is a word at Brandon that race and cultivation knew about him. And we know that Autonomy is a fan. I can't wait to hear what Todium's opinion on him is.
Kelsier is going to end up either befriending or assaulting every shard in the Cosmere, mark my words.
Why can't he befriend and assault them?
Good point. Says your days are numbered.
Then Kalak is attacked by awakened drapes. He thinks to himself, what is this? Some art of Stone Wars? Which is really interesting that he doesn't know anything about awakening.
Yeah, even more interesting that this particular foe does know awakening.
When Kalak sees his captor, he realizes it's one of Prince Adolin's soldiers. My first reaction was that there's no way that this is felt, and there's no way he has breath, but it turns out it was, and I'm glad I pointed him out a few weeks ago.
I want a raise of hands of anyone who thought felt was suspicious, because I sure didn't, and I don't think anyone else clocked it. He's been around for so long that it was a matter of, oh, hey, it's Felt, anytime he showed up.
I don't think I've ever been suspicious of Felt whenever he showed up throughout Stormlight. I think I just thought of him as an Easter egg. It turned out to be dead wrong, because holy cow.
Of course the Scadrian spy was working for the Ghost Bloods. It's the most obvious thing in hindsight. I was freaking out the whole time and blowing up Taylor's messages.
And I was sleeping peacefully and woke up to being told that I need to read them right this second.
Hey, new Ghost Blood lore was dropping. You had to know.
Yep, I love them. Mostly. Like, I often want Kelsier to die, but like in an affectionate way. And Allah, the Sion, was in on it as well. Kalak realizes the Sion was what they used to communicate, and they knew everything they had discussed. The real spy hadn't been Shalon, and Kalak was a fool because he, more than any, should have realized the potential for his friend to turn against him, which is interesting. Maybe talking about Ba'adil Mishram, maybe a regular spren. What's this specifically him that he should be aware about?
Yeah, I want to know more. What spren have turned on you in the past there, dude? Anyway, Ayla the Scion being a spy is insane and calls into question everything they communicated since they started this trip.
Oh, yeah, that's probably something worth it going back and figuring out what was being said, because it sounds like throughout the entire trip, Allah has been listening in on their conversations, not just when she was being used to communicate. At least that's what Clark assumes.
Considering that she was listening in on all of Shalyn and Adeline's arguments, hey, Brandon dropped the lore, we know she heard everything. Even a few chapters ago, they were fully discussing their and Dalinar's plans with Wit.
Ooh, yeah, that seems like a bit of a problem.
Yep. Hey, before we skip past my favorite line, we do have Ayla show her true colors and strong opinions on her traveling companions. Domi, this friend replied, if I had to listen to one more lover's spat between those two, let alone one more makeup session, I would grow a stomach so I could vomit. A Seon after my own heart, truly. No one in book can stand them either.
I wonder if we'll meet Allah in the Elantris sequels and whether she'll have anything to do with Kaisei.
We really can't get the Elantris sequels fast enough.
Boo to anyone who thinks they don't matter.
If Ayla actually shows up, I will lose my mind.
I also went back to chapters 3 and 4 of this book, and the last thing Wit says to Shalon through Isla is, I'll leave you with this. The Ghostbloods wanted something extremely valuable, and you have the key to it standing with you right now. If you want to destroy them, you might not need to kill every last one of them. Instead, you might simply need powerful leverage. And then he trails off. He has some sort of idea. So I wonder what they'll do with this information and what is Wit thinking about. At first, when I went back to this, I thought he had figured out Allah's plot, but doesn't sound like he knows it.
Not to be too much of a Kelsier apologist, but this does take a lot of the oomph out of Wit's threats to him in the last book.
Oof, that's true. He's probably very smug right now. Since he's been listening in the entire time, he probably already knew that Shalon was speaking to Wit.
Mhm.
Allah says that she's already relayed Mishram's location to Ayatel. Which reminds me that this book we're probably gonna get Ayatel's backstory, and I swear, if she's a street rat from Silverlight, I'm going to scream, cry, and throw up. Kelsier, stop adopting young women to fill that Vin-shaped hole in your heart. It's getting weird.
Kelsier, babe, you gotta move on to go be with your family. This is getting real sad.
That's why I want him to die. Affectionate. Uh,
Me too.
yeah. Felt asked if Isla informed Lord Kelsier because he doesn't work for the masked witch. Interesting, he wants to make sure that Kelsier gets the information because he doesn't work for Ayatel. Also, witch is interesting. Wonder where that comes from because it doesn't sound like a Scadrian word, but who knows?
What kind of witch lore do they have, I wonder? Anyway, I am endlessly amused by Lord Kelsier, of all things. Kel really is going to see himself become the thing he used to hate so much.
You know what they say, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain.
Kelsier has somehow managed both.
Though I wouldn't be surprised if Felta was just calling him Lord Kelsier to rile him up. Though I think Mraize and the other Rosharan Ghostbloods call him Lord Thadakar. Do you think that's the name he goes by with the rest of the Cosmere? But Felt would have at least known him during his time, so he doesn't bother?
Yeah, I would think that Felt would know him personally by this point, a privilege probably not afforded to most of the Rosharan sect.
I'm so sad we never got to see Rosharan Ghostbloods in Era 2, especially Lost Metal. I know it probably would have led to too many spoilers for what happens in this book, but still, it would have been so interesting to see how Kaisei and Shai view Kel versus Maireys and Ayatel.
I want so much more information on all of the Ghost Bloods, and I'm kind of bummed too. But any of them showing up would have been a massive spoiler.
If only there was a series about ghost floods that, that funnily enough, was just mentioned in this week's weekly update.
Speaking of, we have Kelsier officially name dropped here. R.I.P. to anyone reading Stormlight before Mistborn.
Oh yeah, we're in the gloves off era. I'm still so excited for people to read Mistborn Era 2, feel pretty good about the Ghost Bloods, then read Way of Kings and realize the capsule was a Ghost Blood and trying to kill Yasna. I'm pretty sure the chapter revealing their organization in Way of Kings is literally called Ghost Bloods. I tried to get the No One Asked You podcast to experience this, but they've already started a Way of Kings, so it's not gonna happen.
I so badly want someone to read all of Mistborn so far and then start Stormlight. I need the Way of King's Ghost Blood reaction.
It's probably gonna happen a lot because Era 2 is just so much less intimidating than Stormlight Archive, which will be really funny.
Yeah. And see, this is why I think people should be a lot looser with the reading order. There are a lot of different valid ways to get some of these reveals, and it's way more interesting if people have different experiences.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, when I eventually make an actual reading order video, I'm going to emphasize that it's fine to have different experiences and even helpful for the fandom as a whole because it'll help you understand more. It'll help you understand things from a different perspective. Allah asks if they should kill Kalak with the dagger. Felt considers it, but he doesn't trust it. Ayatel gave it to them, and Lord Kelsier said to be careful. And if Kelsier says to be careful, then it's probably a sign you shouldn't mess around with it.
Yep. That's the shiny little dagger that Moash used to permakill Yezrien.
Don't remind me. That jerk killed my herald. The Windrunners will never forget this. Since the chapter's coming to an end, I should remind the audience of a few things. First of all, remember that Felt was the one that helped Eleanor get to the Night Watcher / cultivation? Second of all, remember in Lost Metal, which takes place after this book, says it is sending agents out into the Cosmere for the first time. How much does he know about what the Ghostbloods are doing?
Maybe that should have been a hint about Felt's true allegiances if Sayes isn't the one who sent him to Roshar. That Terraceman too, and whoever the Kandra on Roshar is.
Yeah, since Lost Metal, the idea that Sazed is at least telling Milan and the other Kandra that this will be the first time Scadrians are being sent out to feel out the Cosmere has really stuck with me. I don't think we really got to answer if Sazed is lying to Milan and Kelsier has relayed what's going on in the Rider Cosmere, or if he's keeping an eye on what the Ghostbloods are doing on other worlds, or if Kelsier has just not told him anything and he's unaware that the Ghostbloods have been messing with the Rashar for around a decade, at least as far as we know. We know that Hoyd can successfully sneak onto Scadrial without Sazed's knowledge, so he's still not fully in control even after 200 years.
When are we getting Mistborn Ghostbloods again? Not fetching soon enough.
December 2028 to 2030, so really not fast enough.
Ugh.
Also, since Ayatel is going after Shallan and Bai to Mishram, I think we still have a chance of the Theta-Kar Skype call. If Allah can communicate with Ayatel, that means she has a Sion. So we do have a way for them to talk. I think Kalak might also get a Theta-Kar Skype call.
Current day Kelsier Skype call is getting more and more possible by the chapter.
Oh god, true. And now, on to the second interlude, The Divided God. The second interlude picks up with Todium. If I had a nickel for every time a shard was divided, I have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. Also, Todium's POV drawing is really creepy, and as we were messaging in the morning about these chapters, we were talking about the image, and Sam sent a Boon and a Curse pictures, and we discovered that there's slight differences between them. A Boon and the Curse's picture, the kings have different facial expressions. The one on the top is sad with his eyes closed. This week's image, the faces are both scowling with their eyes opened. Also, the previous version, the sad king isn't holding a sword, but instead it's a vine. probably symbolizing both life, the emotional Taravangian wanted to preserve, and the influence of cultivation. However, this week's image, both kings are holding swords, but the swords also do have what looks like vines coming out of them, so this could mean that cultivation still have some influence. Also, the crowns are also slightly different. A boon and a curse's crowns are small with gemstones, while this week's is jagged and sharp. Anyway, back to the actual chapter. Todium is cradling a child in a backwater area of Roshar called Tubaila, who are experiencing a famine due to war, the Everstorm, and political corruption. Todium weeps for them and holds the boy close. Then cultivation arrives. It appears that Taravangian is still suffering from his boon/curse, which makes sense since clearly cultivation is infested in this new odium.
Opening our first Odium chapter with him cradling a dying child and talking about how wonderful the traditions of this tiny, forgotten place are is incredible and sets the stage for just how much nuance we can expect from this character, this new alleged god of hatred.
Oh, yeah. Brandon making the decision to switch out Rays for Taravangian was a stroke of genius, and it's going to be so compelling going forward. Yes, Race was intimidating because of his high shark kill count, but Taravangian is just so much more.
Yeah, Taravangian is easily the best villain in the Cosmere, and we've gotten to know him so well over the last 4 books. Reyes was really effective for what he did, acting as more of a shadowy big bad, but elevating the villain who never wanted to be a villain, the road to hell is paved with good intentions guy, the character who wants so badly to save people and sometimes makes the worst possible decisions to get there, the one who's willing to sacrifice so much to save so few, giving him the power of a shard,
That's terrifying.
it's just about the best decision Brandon has ever made.
We've talked about how if Brandon has a weakness, it's that his villains are sometimes not used to their fullest potential, especially in Stormlight Archive. But I think Race, and so far Taravangian, is the exception. Race was used to his fullest, and I think Taravangian will be done so well.
Yeah, and we've been talking about this, but I really don't understand why so many people are so eager to get rid of or replace him already. If he's one and done as Odium in this book, I'll be so disappointed.
Oh god, yeah. He's been odium for like barely 100 pages. He's probably top 3 Cosmere villains. Replacing him would be such a big mistake, and I don't think Brandon's gonna do it. He's not going to be dealt with in this book, and when he is dealt with, it's at the soonest it's gonna be late arc 2.
I want him around in the space age, and to be honest, I think the actions and reputation of Rosechar that we've seen so far make more sense if he's still at the helm.
Absolutely. I honestly doubt he'll be done after arc 2. I'm so excited to see his interactions with Sazed/Harmony slash possibly Discord, but let's not think about that.
I said months ago that I want Taravangian to also pick up the Shards of Honor and possibly wreck Cultivation too, and become War or Vengeance or whatever that turns out being. I've long thought that the 3 of 16 once ruled, but now the Broken One reigns death rattle is about Odium ruling long term.
Agreed. I think based on small hints we've gotten in the secret projects, it makes a lot of sense that Roshar has War/Vengeance shard. Vengeance would be interesting because a big piece of this story has been the Alethi making the Vengeance pack. The night we've returned to every single book has been the night of Gavilar's death.
That would be some really cool foreshadowing.
But I also would love a war shard. It's just so cool, a world being ruled by the god of war. It's such a Sanderson twist of a typical fantasy trope.
I've gotten really attached to this idea.
Todium Todium talks about the curse of witnessing endless suffering and not being able to save any of them. Cultivation explains that he is forbidden from taking direct action against anyone who has not given them fully to him. Todium assumes that it's because of the pact that made by race, and he believes he could break it. Cultivation warns that in doing so, he would be vulnerable to outside attack. She also warns that the power themselves bind them to their promises, particularly those made sealed from a formal oath.
Taravangian spits at the pact Ray's made, at the bonds he now finds himself under. I think his number one priority moving forward, the only way he truly wins, is by breaking those bonds, preferably without breaking himself in the process.
You think he breaks those bonds? Interesting. I didn't even think about that. He doesn't seem to be as cautious as Race was. We know through a word of Brandon that Rhodium was afraid of Harmony because Harmony was two shards. Meanwhile, Todium is going in guns blazing.
I think he's feeling so much pain and suffering, and it's so overwhelming that he would do anything right now. His best bet is going to be to get Dalinar to break his word, which completely frees him from the oaths he made to honor, without opening himself up to being broken. You're right about Reyes being overly cautious, though. He didn't even want to entertain the possibility, having given up before even facing Dalinar in the contest.
He was also very afraid of being combined with another shard. Rhodium wanted to be pure odium and not be tainted by another shard.
Yeah, he didn't want his own shard to be diluted at all. Something I don't think Teravangian will care about nearly as much.
I was just going to say that. And that may be cultivation's miscalculation. Odium's nature may be to never want to be diluted, to be pure, unfiltered emotions. However, as we learn, this is not Odium. This is Teravangian. The book then says the logical side of him asserted control, shoving down the side that simply wanted to rage. In godhood, this logical, emotional side are no longer bound by the days, and just based off this one line, it seems like they're starting to become more separate individuals, maybe something similar to what's happened with Shalon.
What an interesting way to transform his boon and curse.
Yeah, the entire fandom has been wondering about how the boon and curse would be affected due to his godhood. I wonder how this plays into Cultivation's plan.
Cultivation is either still 5D chessing this entire thing, or she's bitten off far more than she can chew.
I talk about this later, but I think there's some miscalculation she has with Teravangian.
And we've talked about cultivation succumbing to her shard's intent to her own detriment, cultivating and planning to a fault. What do you do when the planning is out of your hands?
Ooh, that's such a good way to put it. Basically, she thinks she can lead him down to the right path. I think the better solution, and I know this isn't in Cultivation's thought process because of her nature, would be to figure out a way to destroy Odium, like with ambition, devotion, and dominion. Yes, those examples are messy, to say the least, but given the power over to someone else seems like a really bad idea, especially with what we learn about especially with what we learned this chapter about how he feels the suffering of everyone in the entire universe. Absolute madness. Odium and Cultivation talk about intervention and how he would have to change systems in order to stop the violence. Todium thinks about striking down the warlords and forcing them to share resources and to no longer harm anyone. Make pain impossible. Cultivation guides him to understanding that directly intervening on a granular level would risk creating a society where no one learned and no civilization progressed, and that where civilization did not progress. Which reminds me a bit of the problem that Harmony is having in the basin. By removing the capacity for violence, he would also remove the capacity for mercy.
Yeah, this is far from the first time someone has thought that forcing people to behave is the solution to all the world's ires, and it won't be the last. The problem is that people who are forced to do the quote unquote right thing through no volition of their own don't learn. They don't progress. I get where Teravangian is coming from, wanting to stop suffering, but it doesn't work this way.
You know, it'd be interesting to go back to that rant that Hoyt had earlier in this book about prayer and God and such. I wonder how that ties in. Anyway, the child dies. Todium turns his ire onto Cultivation, blaming her, Odium, and Honor for not doing better. 8,000 years, and they should have fixed this. Nice that we get confirmation of the timeline, so the shattering happened 8,000 years ago.
I am salivating over canonized timelines. This also means that the whole of the Cosmere that we'll cover, the shattering to wherever we end up, is less than 10,000 years, which really doesn't feel like that much.
Yeah, it feels crazy short. They continue their conversation, and Todium argues that there should be a spectrum of choice that is allowed because no society can persist with complete freedom, and growth can happen within limits. I feel like Sam and my political science degrees are going to be really handy during these chapters.
I'm having flashbacks to social contract theory. But essentially, in any society, we agree to give up a certain amount of freedom in exchange for security. For example, following rules and regulations and not just doing what we want all the time. But it's a catch-22, because giving up too much freedom for security actually makes you significantly less safe.
Yes, but without society, anyone can just roll up and take your things and harm you, and face little to no consequences. In theory, giving up your freedom is the cost of protection from that.
Yeah, giving up a small amount of freedom is probably necessary for a functional and orderly society, but giving up too much is when you run into problems, because giving too much control over to some higher authority is incredibly risky.
You're giving up your freedom to someone who could potentially abuse that power. So you have a so you have to limit the freedom of those people, which is a form of regulations. This is basically the problem that Teravangian is grappling with.
Teravangian will run into the problem of taking too much freedom. He wants to control everything and make sure that no one suffers, but that just doesn't work.
I wonder if Teravangian will eventually get the idea of altering human nature. We know that shards can at the very least alter genetics. We saw with just the Lord Ruler when he genetically altered the Ska and noblemen.
That's a good question. I wonder how much you can alter people intellectually and emotionally rather than just physically.
Plus, Rhythm or War brought up that Rhodium wanted to create an army from Roshar. I'm guessing that Todium will also have a similar idea, so he might end up messing with that.
One of my endgame Cosmere theories actually plays with this idea of free will, essentially theorizing that the Oath to Rasharans in the Space Age are not acting entirely independently of Shardic influence. If Terravodium also picks up honor, then he may be able to turn around and compel these Radiants to action through the Nile Bond.
So they basically would be spiked. I could see that. I think there's always been this worry that Radiants with corrupted Spren like Renara and Relaine could be used to be as some tool control, and maybe the Radiants would end up acting like spikes.
Yeah. And you've seen this one on Tumblr already, but I had some back and forth with another friend, and we basically came to the conclusion that this could have also have been a driving force behind the Recreants. If Honor could control the Radiants as if they were spiked and he was losing his mind, then the bond becomes incredibly dangerous and has to be severed.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. That could be a major twist and a really crazy thing to deal with. If that were the case, imagine what would happen with Shallan and her double bound. Plus, think about Rhythm of War, where Moash used his connection with Kaladin to be able to manipulate him and to torture him, essentially. I think that might be foreshadowing.
Yeah. Investiture and Spirit Web cracks are some crazy things if you think about it. Probably a lot safer if your shard is dead, actually.
Yeah. Cultivation leads him down that line of logic, saying calming the Everstorm and making peace now will only kick the can down the road. Todium replies that cultivation needs to learn her own lessons, and the fact that multiple forces are manipulating them is the reasons they aren't getting along. Honor's touch still lingers, and cultivation's meddling is subtle, but it still causes strife and tension. It's even worse in the greater Cosmere with so many cowardly gods. Which, excuse you, Harmony's doing just fine, thank you. Hashtag Team Scadrial. This isn't necessarily the case that multiple shard influences cause strife and tension. People butt heads on Nalthis, and Indama is the only shard there. There are planets with no shards, and they still have issues.
Hey, Edgley is doing her dang best minding her own business, thank you very much. Hashtag Team Nelthus. But yeah, people are people and will cause strife regardless of outside influence.
And of course, I'm sure this is the point that Brandon is making. Cultivation questions whether shards giving people choices really makes them cowardly. Todium replies that it's because they killed their father and worry that the same will happen to them. The shards consolidate their power so no one can kill them.
We really can't get Dragonsteel quickly enough. I need to know what went down to lead to the shattering. I need to know what their theology was. I need to know how they even came up with that crazy scheme and made it work. I need to see all of these shard holders before they went crazy. I need it.
Most people are so excited for Dragonsteel and to finally get the backstory it's going to be so satisfying. Getting to see the relationships between the vessels prior to them picking up the shards, all the relationship drama, going to be so epic. Unfortunately, more Mistborn books means we have to wait that much longer for Dragonsteel.
I just want all the books, every single one of them.
Yeah. Odium steps towards Cultivation, raising a fist towards her, the emotions making a tempest of rage inside of him, and then he shouts, "There's a tempest in me!" Wait, no, wrong fantasy story. Pray to harm me that no one from Rings of Power steps anywhere near the Stormlight Archive adaptation. Anyways, Todium replies that he's the embodiment of passion, and anyone who suffers in the Cosmere, he can feel it. That is the burden of the power. Honestly, this is crazy to hear and explains why Odium is so Odium.
Yeah, that would genuinely drive me insane. I actually feel really bad for him.
Yeah. Thankfully, I'm sure Godhood makes it a bit more manageable, but seriously, that's insane. I wonder if a dragon would have been better equipped to handle it, since I think they can hear when people pray to them or something like that.
Yeah, dragons in general are much more capable of handling the insanity of a long, long life, but even Corey seems to be breaking under her shard.
Yeah, the scheme has always sounded a bit insane the moment we heard about it.
How do you even gather 17 people and convince them that they should kill a godlike being and take that power for themselves?
How do you even get away with it? Like, they must have had to hide, otherwise, Adonasium would have figured it out and tried to stop them. It's like trying to kill the Lord Ruler, except 1,000 times harder in every possible way.
Yeah, like Mistborn gets pitched as the craziest, most impossible mission ever, and then the foundation of your fantasy universe is an assassination 1,000 times more impossible and crazy?
Yeah, it's just absolute madness. Cultivation tries to explain that this is why she called the powers of Odium the most dangerous and difficult of them all. Before she can continue, Todium cuts her off, saying he knows their anger. There will be no way to soothe that agony until. He trails off, looking into her eyes, the depths of the eternity. She demands to know what he means by that. He explains that the agony won't be soothed until there is only one God, which has to make Cultivation feel really great about herself. She spent Harmony knows how long devising a plan to get her, only for her brand spanking new Odium vessel to also have the same goal of becoming the only God.
Well, she really underestimated that free will, ironically enough.
Oh my god, she did, didn't she? That's so funny.
Taravangian has an inner monologue in Rhythm of War, talking about how you can plan and plan, but if one man's choices don't align to your will, it won't matter. Dear Cultivation might be in over her head on this one.
Oh, just a bit. I love it so much. We haven't talked about this a lot since Odium and Cultivation haven't been around in these chapters, but I love this plot so much. It's been one of the things I've been looking forward to the most for this book, and I don't think Brandon is going to disappoint. Cultivation warns that Path destroyed Race, but Todium says he destroyed his predecessor.
He's not wrong, but dang, that's scary.
Yeah. He demands to be left alone because he's done with her lessons. Cultivation stalks away and vanishes, leaving him with the knowledge that she would work against him. She had already been planning to do so, pulling on threads for millennia to get what she wanted. She raised him up because the old Odium was becoming too violent, too willing to destroy everything as the emotions raged freely. They had been her only choice to prevent a much greater cataclysm, which feels like the story between Cultivation and Todium is going the way I thought it would, which is Cultivation has been plotting and scheming for ages. Todium is her plan, and she's going to try and manipulate him to whatever goals she has, whether that be to stop Odium from rampaging across the Cosmere or whatever else she wants. However, I think it's been no worry in the fandom that Todium will outsmart her.
My first coherent thought when I read his ascension in Rhythm of War was how terrifying the whole concept is because he's such a wild card. Anything feels possible, and you never quite know what he's going to do or whether he'll be ruled by the passion or by the intellect.
Both equally dangerous. When he's intelligent, he's extremely callous, and when he's compassionate, he's barely functional. Todium kneels down and allows himself to feel. He was not Odium, he held Odium. He would not let it rule. He was Taravangian, with an important mission. He was the only one who could both see the danger coming and be willing to stop it. He was Taravangian, the divided one, and he could save them, all of them, which, as it was 4 years ago, is still terrifying for both Roshar and the rest of the Cosmere. I also bet now that on the back of the dust jacket, the unholy abomination bug people will be talking about the divided one.
Taravangian is certainly going to try to save them all, and I can't wait to see it. The movement from Odium back to Pterodangien in this chapter, but not completely, is also really interesting. He's trying to fight it.
I don't think we've really seen this before in the shards. Granted, we've never really seen many shards, but the idea that the vessel is trying as hard as it can to retain its sense of self is interesting. I think Sazed kind of stepped into the idea of what it was like to be a god, and Sazed has become less himself lately.
Yeah, and Say's holds a significantly less volatile shard combo too, and it's still really hard for him.
Same with probably most of the shards. Corey and Dragonsteel will probably be very different from what we see here.
I bet a lot of them will be completely unrecognizable. I really need Dragonsteel.
These overall, these chapters were pretty good. Last week, I was really hoping that if we get interludes, they were going to be from Odian's perspective and to understand how he's functioning in all this. And I'm really excited to see where he goes next.
Yeah, these are my favorite chapters so far, and the first ones to make me really, really excited for the rest of the book without also making me really anxious. This is gonna be so good.
I still think the chapter where Kaladin is asked to be heir is my favorite, but these are our top tier. We talked about this over Messenger, but I think we're both pretty sure that there will be 2 interlude chapters between each part because of how many parts there'll be. So next week we'll probably get back to the main chapters with new POVs, which is exciting. So that's about all that we have for this week. Thank you for watching, and remember, there's always another secret.